Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everybody. Where's my button? Hold on. I know it's on loop and then it's low. Let me do that one more time and we put it louder. Let me do it here. Guys, I know it's Thursday and you're going, oh, what's going on over here? We actually have a show going on. The Convo Couch don't go on Thursdays. I don't know if there'll be a show tomorrow. So I figured I'd do a show today that when Fee gets back off assignment. When Fee gets off assignment, she won't be so mad at me for taking a Friday off. So I kind of covered up. And we do have a special guest that it's a late, join in. Somebody went to, did you ever see the movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield? Get your suit on. Get your suit on. We need you. So she joined so we can have some lady power, but we'll introduce her last because we are saving the best for last. Let's start with the first. This guy I should have had on my show quite some time, a long time ago. It's been far too long. I'm glad he's joining us today. I kind of look at this guy a lot like myself. If you don't know, it's kind of a rumor that I'm one of the nicest guys at the MCSE group, right? Well, this guy is known as one of the nicest guys at RBN. Don't let him getting all fired up fool you. He's got a great heart, a great soul, a great mind, and he's joining us here today. JaybeFaunt is finally on the Convo Couch. JB, how you doing?
It is great to be here. Thank you so much to be joining you. I've been wanting to join you for quite a while, sometime. And just to let you guys know, everybody at RBN is excited that I'm also on here with you as well. So it is a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, I don't want to drop it, but Fiorella is going to be in a country before I went. I think she got pissed off that I went to Cuba first without her. So she's trying to one-up me. So now to come back, I had JaybeFaunt on the show for the first time without her, and she's going to be mad. She's going to be like, you had JB on without me? So you're my secret little weapon today, JB. Thank you so much for coming on, and I am really excited that you're here today because I tend to have some hard conversations moving forward because I think we as a people have to start having some really strong political discourse on the things we disagree on, things we agree on, whatever the case may be. There should be no boundaries, and I'm glad you're here today to join in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, there's a lot of tough conversations that need to be had, really, in order to get ourselves on the right track, so that we can actually have a more equal and equitable and egalitarian system. Because the one that we have right now just isn't doing it. And so I'm happy to have those conversations because it means that we'll actually be moving forward rather than regressing.
Absolutely. Cancel culture needs to be canceled. Another guy coming to the show for the first time. I do want to hang out with this guy. Definitely smoke some. He's always got stuff lit up in the room, smoke going everywhere. He's got a great personality, and it is also his first time on the show. Too long. Reef Breland is here today. What's up, Reef? As he's going right into it.
How's everybody doing? Honored to be on the Convo Couch as always. Nice to be with the newspaper guy. Bunch of Florida boys on today. Look at that. Got all the Florida men here.
Wait, JB, you're in Florida?
I'm in Orlando, yeah.
Where are you at, Reef?
Under Tallahassee. Right under.
I'm in the real Florida. South Florida.
Yes.
Boca Raton. Yep. Just kidding. Yep. I always make fun of Fee for O-Town.
Yep. Debbie Wasserman's district. That area.
And you're in like Texarkana area. You're like in Arkansas, Alabama, all the way up there.
Yep, pretty much. I'm in the Panhandle. Saltwater rednecks as far as the eye can see. That's pretty much what I got over here. Yeah,
this is going to be an interesting, unique panel today. We're going to have some great conversations. Thank you for joining, and looking forward to hearing what you got to say, my friend.
Yeah, same.
All right, this other guy, he's become a close friend already right off the bat. We got to hang in New York at Gerald Salente's event and go have some good Mexican food together and just have some great conversations. He's really made a point of getting out there and getting in our politicians' face, holding our constituents accountable. He's really made a thing of it, and his whole group has been following along. You know him. You've heard about him before. He's AOC's worst nightmare. Jose Vega's come to the show today. How you doing, big dog?
I'm good. And that Mexican food was not good, by the way. I don't know why we thought that we'd get good Mexican food upstate New York. It made me sick, actually. There's a period where I had to leave about 15 minutes. You know why? I was in the bathroom that whole time. You know why? Because those burritos were terrible, man. It's all oily and greasy. My body didn't like it. I had to, that's why I'm late, by the way. I was at a doctor's. You know why I was at the doctor's? Because of what we had in New York.
Because of the Mexican food, right? You blame the Mexican food.
Yeah.
You know what you did do? Though I was cold and you brought me back a jacket. I'll never forget that. You're a great guy too, brother.
Oh, yeah. That's not just any jacket I brought you, brother. That was the one I called out AOC in.
Ah, that's why I had that, just jumpy feeling, ready to rock and roll. Jose, don't do that to me. That was supposed to be a nice, friendly dinner, and it get me all fired up. I appreciate it, my man.
Okay.
All right, so we have somebody. When I said get your suit on, we need you. We went to the bullpen. She came out fired. She's ready. She's all fired up. She's joining us today. This is one of my favorite people. I've been on plenty of shows with her before. I think she's one of the most underrated peoples in the truther world. And when I say truther, I hate to put labels on people, but if you want the receipts on stuff like the COVID-19, the fourth industrial revolution, everything the social engineers are trying to do to us, this young lady has been screaming about at the top of her lungs for quite some time. She is my friend who caused the whole Cocaine Bear fiasco, had to bring it to the table. That was a real messed up movie. Amber King is with us today.
Amber.
Hi, thanks for having me. How's it going, gentlemen?
Hi.
I'm here all the way from the West Coast, so hope I can represent well. Hang with the Florida guys.
Well, I'm New York, so
okay, true that.
Florida is just another part of New York. That's all it is. It's like the fifth borough is what we used to call it back in the days. Same thing, Amber.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's get going. The first topic, I want to talk about this. I'm going to start with Amber because I know Amber's going to have – I know what Amber's going to say.
Maybe.
And disclaimer, I think a lot of you guys know that a lot of the things I talk about, I'm always like the election guy. Newspaper guy, yes, but I talk about elections. We do not have fair elections in the United States. And guess what? I can say that now because a couple of days ago, YouTube has now reversed its policy. I wish they would give us our monetization back. It really sucks. Like, I'm looking at this thing. We have 61 people watching. They can handicap you. They can kneecap you. They can keep you out of the algorithm. They can silence you. They can shut you down if they want to. They play games. They're not abiding by Section 230 of the NDAA, which says they must act as a platform and not a publisher, meaning they can't pick winners or losers. They're going to say it's the algorithm, this and that. They have many ways to hide behind it. I kind of think that YouTube is the government. But elections we can talk about now. They're reversing their policy. So I'd like 3 years of monetization back. That's a lot of money. But elections, I don't think, are still fair. There are 26 or 27 states in which you can ballot harvest, which means somebody can take as many ballots as they want and drop them off for you. We have mass mail-outs in a lot of these states that during the COVID protocol, they just shotgunned out all these ballots. The only thing is there's no chain of custody. They don't know where we go. We're not quite certain for sure who they get to, but anybody can bring them back. So you don't really have to create voters. You just got to create ballots, and that's the situation. And we're still with the proprietary software. I know a lot of people are saying Dominion, but before Dominion, they were Diabold and they cheated. And ES&S is the other company, along with Smartmatic. All of them have a history, kind of like the pharmaceutical companies, a long history of corruption, a long history of failure, a long history of black box voting, meaning they'll never give up the proprietary software when they're forced to do so. So elections, I don't think, are fair. However, when election season comes around, I think you'll all agree with me here, that's when the conversation starts, right? That's when we can have talks, whether it be about gun control. That's when we can talk to everybody about healthcare. That's when a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on at the border. That's when the conversation comes. And even though elections aren't fair, I still will vote because I believe that the ruling class, the oligarchs, whoever, are not going to take away my right to speak my voice. We should always participate in that practice because even if we were to abolish everything, it will always come down to consensus, right? I always talk that story. There are 11 anarchists in the woods. They got to fight. They have limited weapons. One want to go this way. One's got to go the other way. They're going to take a vote. Guess what? Adam and Eve took a vote. Now, you can theories on why Eve won that vote and they ate the apple, but I'm not going to say that on this particular show. But, you know what I'm saying? We will always, majority rules will come into play more than ever, so you should always vote. So, with that being said, We all saw, I think a lot of y'all saw my video when I went to RFK and I faced him and I said, hey, what's your story? What's your position on Israel and Palestine? Explain why you took the tweets down. I'm pretty sure most of the people in this panel think he was BS for that answer. A lot of people will forgive him. But now we have somebody who's been vocal, somebody who's marched in the streets with the people of Palestine in the United States, somebody who's been there front and center and says, no, 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 Israel is an apartheid state. That is Dr. West. Amber, what are your overall thoughts initially about Dr. West entering the race and also him coming to run in the MPP party? Go ahead.
Well, I was surprised that he showed up because I haven't seen him much in the last 3 years, and I've been a huge fan of Dr. West. And over the last 3 years, he's been awkwardly silent, and we have invited him to so many events. We got a couple of recordings, but when we had our big event in DC, everybody else made it. He was up having lunch with Bernie. So I'm very disappointed that he hasn't been more outspoken with what's happening and the lack of democracy in the U.S. and that he hasn't been able to show up until now. Where has he been? I mean, he got let go from Harvard, right? So what has he been doing with his time? I'm curious. And nobody wants to touch that question with a 10-foot pole, it seems.
JB, why don't you jump in there? Because, Dr. West is going to be on Sabby Sabs tonight, right? I think there's a panel going on. I pretty much know your stances on Israel and Palestine. And we know how vocal Dr. West has been there. And I got to say this much, too, as well. Dr. West, let me put myself big real quick. Dr. West, I reached out to him the other day. I didn't get an answer if he'll come on my show, but I kind of got a little bit of, I'd love to do it eventually kind of thing, hopefully. And hopefully he'll come on. But Dr. West has always given me the courage to talk to people who think differently than me. I think he's been great about that stuff. The way he handled Bakari Sellers, where I would have just kind of jumped on over Bakari Sellers when Bakari was just being so disrespectful. I think that's something that's important there because I do believe that Dr. West embraces that. But what are your initial thoughts, JB, of him coming to the table and him also running an MPP? And is Amber fair when she says, where have you been?
I'm going to start at the back of the questioning of where has he been. I think it's kind of a fair question because, a lot of people have been questioning where do you stand on a lot of these issues that have been developing over the last 2-3 years. I know that Sabby had him on last time she had him on sometime last year. She asked him if he would run, and he said, never say never. And so now we know the answer for that. As far as Dr. West running, it's a popcorn moment for people like me, right? For a lot of people like me, we were sitting there getting excited. We were just like, oh my gosh, what are all the people who, stood behind RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson? What are they going to do now? Because a lot of them love Dr. West, but they jumped in and said, oh yeah, I'm supporting this person. And now he's in, and it's like, so what are you going to do now? Are you going to continuously support that person? And a lot of them consider themselves progressives. Well, if you look at Dr. West's platform, it's more progressive than people like Marianne Williamson or RFK in some respects. So are they going to, continuously stand behind people who are within the Democratic Party, who they decry, day in, day out, all the time? And now you have somebody who has the courage to go outside of the duopoly and say no to the duopoly. And one of the things that I brought out on my show on Tuesday was that even though I do not think that Dr. West has a snowball's chance in hell in winning, the thing is that it is a great time to use his platform to open wide the conversation, to tell people, okay, he is for these different policies that are very popular among us. Somebody like myself, who is a socialist, I would go, let's take this a little bit further. And instead of going along with presidential electoral politics, let's get that on the ground and let's come together as a community so that we can actually push for these policies and truly remake the system as we see fit, as the populace, as the workers, as the proletariat, as it were. And so I see this as an opportunity to have a national conversation, despite him running. And I don't really think that there's a really good chance, because, to be honest with you, I seen what they did to RFK's uncle. I seen what they did to his dad, you know. And as far as him running an MPP, I have some concerns with MPP. You have the MPP petitioners that have spoken out against anti-blackness within the organization. Then on top of that, you have the issues regarding Nick Brana and his alleged sexual assault allegations that have been pushed out against him. And so these actually make me, look at it with a side eye. But at the same time, looking at what the Green Party has had issues with, have major issues with them, as well as the Democratic Party. Hello, they're the part of the duopoly. So it's like, I feel like Dr. Cornell West is in a position of he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. And so that's the thing. And it's like, it's kind of like, what do you do? I personally will not be endorsing anybody publicly, because as somebody in an independent media space, I, want to see how it just turns out. But at the same time, I am happy to have this conversation that he helps bring to the fore.
Great answer, man. And I hear you too as well. I got to say this much. I am concerned with some stuff with MPP. I'm not concerned about the sexual stuff that it was brought forth. Everything I saw, he might have handled it properly, but I'm not concerned about that. There's other issues that are more concerning to me when it comes to Nick Brana that needs to be looked upon at MPP, but definitely not that. That much I'll say. Reef, jump in there. Who do you think is a better choice? RFK, Dr. West, and Marianne Williamson? Because once everybody speaks, we're going to float back to that question that JB kind of just brought to the table over there. Is Dr. West more progressive and a better choice than these other people? Because I think there's a couple issues that we have to talk about, and we'll get to the table. But let me get your first initial thoughts, Reef.
Oh, so much to cover on that. I mean, none of the above would be my answer first.
Why?
Well, I feel like I think all of us talk about it, especially you, Pasta, when you talk about election integrity. Until you deal with that, it's hard to get your candidates to do what you need them to do to begin with, regardless of what party they're in, regardless of who they are. It's too easily co-opted, in my opinion. But I'm not going to tell anyone who to vote for or not to vote for. I think that's an important part of being in the space as well. Like JB, I don't feel like it's our job to endorse candidates like that. I feel like that's for the people to decide on that. In regards to Cornell, I do like the guy. He's been pretty good on just about every stance. He's had some misses. I think we know those misses, most of us. And he's been in the establishment for far too long, generally connected to politicians and, people that we definitely don't like now. Hanging out with Nina Turner and Bernie, and back when that was cool to do, right? We didn't know that they were completely bought out yet, but we read Chris Hedges' article last night announcing the Cornell run. He says the right things. My issue is, can you get the right things done? How are you going to get those done? Especially when, those issues at MPP, like the ballot access, like what's the game plan? That's my thing. There's not a lot of specifics here. I'm looking into it. It's definitely piqued my interest. I think it's piqued all of our interest that there's an actual generally progressive lefty candidate. Do I feel like Cornell will listen to the people if pushed? A lot more likely than others. But I don't know. I think I'm with you guys that, I'm not going to have the government take away my right to vote either. So, I'll be voting for ballot initiatives and locals and all that stuff that you need to. And, if I have a choice to not Christmas tree that top answer, I'll take it if I feel like it's better than the others. They got to earn that crap, though. They got to earn my vote either way. So
Reef, what is your greatest criticism of Dr. Cornell West? You did mention that there are some things that we should be concerned about. What are your greatest criticisms?
mainly frivolous stuff. Like he had some bad Reagan takes, I think, at one point. There's a couple of little things here and there. You know, how he handled COVID, stuff like that originally was a little off. But you know, I think people like Cornell can definitely grow and learn and get better. So, you know, we'll see.
Yeah. I think that is a fair question. Is Dr. West concerned about election integrity? We haven't heard him talk about that. You know, I know a lot of people, it was taboo, they couldn't talk about, and it came such a divisive issue. Everybody was like, oh, you know, Trump. They made it more about Trump versus Biden and then got into tribal politics rather than saying, let's just look at the system. Let's look at the framework. Is it fair? And, you know, I've been blessed that I've been to 6 Latin American elections, and I can tell you those elections are a lot more fair and transparent. Nicaragua is amazing, and I know it hurts a lot of people here at home when you tell them, hey, man, you all bash on socialism. That socialist country that I went to has a far better representation of democracy than we do here in the great old U.S. of A. I know you're ready to get in there, Jose. Give us your thoughts right away. Who is that better choice, RFK, Dr. West, Marianne Williamson? And please, we're focusing more on Dr. West since he just announced. If there's any criticisms you'd like to throw in there, I'd love to hear them as well.
I think the better choice is actually you, as in the royal you, not you, Pasta. Not to say you wouldn't make a good president, but I think the person who's listening to this right now is the better choice. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I like Dr. Cornell West, and I think the fact that he's running third party against a duopoly already tells me everything I need to know. He could have ran as a Democrat and rode that wave up. Could have ran as Green Party, I guess, and rode that wave up. No matter what he did, he was going to get criticized to hell and back. I think The Nation published an article today talking about how Dr. Cornell West has no business running for president, which, first of all, what kind of smug asshole do you have to be to just tell somebody they have no business running for president? In terms of people's criticism about the People's Party and stuff, for full transparency, I work with Nick Brana. We've trained people to actually do interventions. Some of those people have gone out and done interventions. Every experience I've had with Nick Brana has only ever been positive. He helped organize the Rage Against the War Machine. Are there problems internally? I don't think there's an organization on this planet that has never had any kind of quarrel or strife or internal problem within themselves that can't be handled internally. I don't think we should be looking for perfection from anyone. I think you're going to find flaws with everyone. Every single one of us on this call has our own flaws. I'm sure Cornell has his flaws. RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson has some really big flaws, namely that they're running for the Democratic Party. I think the issue is, can we shape these presidential candidate campaigns to actually work for the people and do something that can change something before you get to the ballot box in November? What do I mean by that? I mean, Cornell right now is in a very good position, and the fact that he got a lot of mainstream coverage and people are, feel a little threatened by him. What is it that we can push him to say and do that will actually threaten the establishment? And I'll go out on a limb and say I think that's also very true for RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. It's like a good litmus test, because RFK Jr., has been saying good things about who killed his uncle and his dad. Is he willing to go one step further and start calling out people like Biden? And he's had some really bad missteps with talking about Israel and the apartheid stuff. So I'm inclined to say no. But people like Max Blumenthal and such do believe he might have the courage. And even Oliver Stone, who I just interviewed, says that RFK Jr. has the guts to stand up to this apparatus. But the question is, can we push them to do that? All of them, Cornell, RFK. And I think one thing we can all agree on is that Biden, if the elections were honest, will not be the next Democratic presidential nominee. But I don't think we live in that world. And I'll just say one thing, people say, well, it's a good thing that RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson are running against Biden because it'll push Biden to the left and it'll make Biden do things right. I think it'll just make Biden cheat more, or it'll make the Democratic Party cheat harder. And I don't think that's why we should put any hope in either party. So those are my thoughts and comments.
Who wants to jump in there right away? I was going to circle back the wagons to Amber, but JB and Reef, I've seen you guys taking notes too as well. So if somebody wants to jump in and say something, unless
Yeah.
you're the young lady, Amber, do you have something to add on to that or no?
Oh, well, man, I could jump in. Maybe the aliens will be interrupting our 2024 election. I heard that this morning. We've also got, I mean, it's what we're just waiting for Pompeo to jump in, right? We got, what's his name up, the Oracle dude up, or not Oracle, what was it? Great Western, who was bought out by Microsoft. I mean, my litmus test is how many steps away from you are you from Bill Gates? And that's who I'm going to probably be voting for. And, that's
Bill
a hard
Gates?
thing for any of them to pass.
You're going to be voting for Bill Gates?
No, anybody who's the farthest
Oh.
removed from him. Which I haven't found a candidate yet who hasn't been, have connections in some form, way, or sponsoring something else. He's pushing a lot of the ESG funding in the United States, and we've seen a lot of that, especially on the environmental side. I've seen a huge uptick in that push, and now you guys on the East Coast are getting our normal wildfire season here on the West Coast is happening in the East Coast. Well, that starts to change conversations really quickly into what the priorities and goals are. Marianne was never a choice for me, and she writes wonderful spiritual books. She should stick in that realm. And I've definitely had some problems with RFK, and I've been a huge fan, and worked with Children's Defense, but I have a hard time with somebody not knowing where the majority of issues around the world with children lie, and Palestine is definitely one of them. So, and same thing though, I'm not going to be picking candidates. I've done this work. I've done political organizing. I've rallied the people. The left in general, or what used to be the left, I don't even think exists anymore. It's completely fractured. It's just a bunch of, homeless, sporadic people with great ideas, but nobody's really been able to bring it together in a meaningful way. And we can see by the amount of propaganda being pushed how hard and how afraid they are of any kind of anything, whether it's, kind of what Pasta would refer to as the truther movement coming together, the anti-vaxxers, or, like whatever it is. A lot of different conversations are happening all over the country, and COVID blew up everything that had happened. And I think that's a wonderful thing for the fallout of it. Terrible thing had happened, but because people are actually having conversations with their neighbors and wondering where their food comes from, a lot bigger than where they used to be before. Before it was, the big political push and these classic, we're going to fight for medical care for all. Now everybody's really wondering what the hell's happening in our medical system, which they should have been years ago. So, it's a lot of different things are happening. The Libertarian Party has a candidate that nobody's even talking about, Mike Termat, who's wonderful. I don't know much about him because I'm, that's all news to me. But, this seems to be like pin the tail on the donkey at the moment. And the bigger issue, of course, is we have no election integrity. Biden just blocked additional documents from being put out in the public today. It's show business at this point.
JB, jump in there, because I don't know where you are right now on COVID, what your stances are. I know that some people in RBN, maybe have come to fruition. I don't want to speak for anybody in your group because I'll let them come on individually. We can talk about it. But this is a big issue that I see a lot of leftists still dragging their feet on, like not understanding where this thing came, that this was a bioweapon, that this was worked in conjunction with the military-industrial complex and Big Pharma, that they knew, what was it? It was in 2006, Amber, 2016, they knew that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were good to combat COVID because they've done these studies a long time ago. Dr. David Martin showing the patents.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
they were working on this early 2000s. By 2016, gain of function. I was one of the people who helped end gain of function in the United States, which was like some miraculous win because we had been shot down in all these GMO labeling bills. You had Pompeo pushing all this, the Dark Act through. We were trying to get labeling nationally in the country for GMOs, trying to talk about the impacts of genetic modifications in our food supply, and then he becomes Secretary of State. He does the same thing Cargill's going after, the same kind of contracts in Ukraine in 2014, along with a regime change. Like, it all ties back into it. But they were publishing reports and studies and patents back 2012, 2016, 2014. And you just had to dig for it to know, you know, and some of us have been screaming about this and, you know, oh, you're a crazy mom and, you know, you're an anti-vaxxer. And it's like, look, something is very, very deeply wrong with our medical system.
Yeah.
This is a, you know, you don't become a doctor unless, in any kind of institution, unless you're going to be doing exactly what you're told to be by the administration. It's not, I took an oath and I get to do the right thing and I get to make all the decisions anymore. That does not exist in this system.
Everybody make sure they mute your mic when you're not talking to as well. We're getting a little feedback. But go ahead, JB, because I want to know your position on this, because this could be something in my mind, because I heard, the only time I really heard Dr. West talk about this, I heard him talk about with Dr. Richard Wolf, and it was more like we're not prepared enough for a situation from that. That's not the conversation that I personally want to have. I consider myself a leftist, but even though I was not with the pack when it came to COVID and my mind leaned more to the conservative side, I think now is enough time when we look at the data, we see what's going on. We just look at the VAERS alone, and there's more deaths and more adverse effects in the history of all vaccines. Yet some people in that Democratic Party establishment are still saying a hurricane's coming, make sure you get vaccinated. Do you think this could hurt, Dr. West? And your thoughts on anything else we were talking about there in the past couple minutes?
So I've been more on the quiet side regarding the jab for a particular reason. As somebody who is also disabled and immunocompromised, this is a tough position to be in, because while I also want my fellow disabled people to be as safe as possible, I do not trust the pharmaceutical companies, even though I do depend on some of the medications that are created by them in order to survive. And when it comes to what is being revealed now, I think it's undeniable. But at the same time, I don't like calling people anti-vaxxers. I say COVID vaccine skeptics. That's what I call them. And I'll put it this way. If they were giving us the vaccine from Cuba, I think there's 3 vaccines that they had. I think that I would have jumped more for that than the ones that are created by companies, corporations that are really out there to make more money. I did get the jab, you know, because my physician told me to get it, and I did. But as far as the boosters and things like that, I avoided, and I haven't gotten COVID at all since it started. Partially because I'm broke as hell, and I can't leave my house. But as far as what the opinion on it as it stands is, oh boy, it's tough for me to go along, in either direction, because I want to stay as healthy as possible and I want people to be as healthy as possible. But at the same time, what are these corporations doing? I guess I kind of feel like I'm still in the middle, and some people be like, but it's been, 3 years, how are you still in the middle? I don't want to, gosh, it's just tough. But at the same time, I feel like if you are still skeptical about them, or if you're against the COVID vaccine due to the research, then I feel like then that's your prerogative.
Yeah.
If you still feel like it's a net positive for you, then that's what you do for yourself. But as to dictate to people what they should and shouldn't do, that's kind of a tough one, because at the same time, you have some people who are at risk, it's really tough.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when it comes to Dr. Cornell West, if you're going to run for president, you need to have a more solid stance. As for me, just as somebody who's in this space, I very rarely ever talk about COVID. So therefore, that's why I didn't have a stance. And if I did, then I would have talked about it more often on my channel, but I just don't. But yeah, it's a toughie for me. And I know that a lot of people are on one side or the other. My thing is, I do not agree with mandates per se.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say per se. I just don't agree with mandates because I also believe in body autonomy. Because, for instance, a woman's right to choose, a man's right to choose, anybody's right to choose, really. And so I would like for people to be more educated on it. But the corporations, the big pharma, trying to make as much profit off of it, that really put a big stink on people's opinions about, the efficacy and the safety of these vaccines. And plus, on top of it, if they've known for a long time, if they had, COVID, in research for a long time, and they already have these the knowledge that they have about it, and yet it's like they're just now having a vaccine, so I'm kind of going in real time in my thoughts about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a tough one because you're in a tough position. And a friend of mine called me up and he's, handicapped, immunocompromised, and he's like, dude, what should I do? And I'm like, I can't answer that question for you. It's a tough one. I can tell you what I'm doing, you know what I'm saying? But it's a tough question. But the point is, and Reef, I'd like to hear your point on this real quick. Dr. West is gonna have to talk about it, is he not? Somebody's gonna question him. See, that's the thing. I have a clip real quick. In fact, let's just play the clip real quick because this is something I've been finding out myself a lot lately. There's always been a lot of people who are saying Dr. Fauci and a lot of these Democrats shield themselves from tough questions. That's why what you're doing, Jose, is so important because they do shield themselves. They stay in their own echo chambers. Here's Megyn Kelly going after Dave Rubin about, guess what, Mr. DeSantis, who also happened to be in New Hampshire the same time that RFK was. The only difference was there was a press conference where RFK said anybody wants to come in and get some questions, take some questions. DeSantis refused to take questions in the room, and then when he got confronted, he got all pissed off. Take a look at this real quick, everybody.
By NBC because they keep lying
Or
about
me.
him. So,
or me. What? Seriously, it's not about me, but he's got to grow a pair. Like, come on for an adversarial. Go with somebody who's going to ask you some tough questions. Be a man. I'm sick of like the duck and cover drill that he's doing only with friendly media. Would you grow up? I'm not adverse to DeSantis, but he is going to get some tough questions. Who has he done? Who has he done that's asked him tough questions?
well, first off, I 100% would be for DeSantis doing your show. He absolutely should.
Why is he not on the list? We've asked a million times. We asked again this round. He's too chicken. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I think you're in touch with them. So he absolutely should. I 100%.
Well, I'm in touch with them, but I haven't gotten a yes. Show. I mean, literally, like, with all due respect to like the local radio host in Tennessee, which he doesn't need to worry about. Why wouldn't he? Like, our show is literally one of the biggest shows in the country. I mean, we've got way more viewers than anything he could do on most of Fox News, other than a couple of the primetime shows, all of CNN, all of MSNBC. It's insanity. There's only one reason. Dave. He's afraid of being asked tough questions. That's absurd, first of all, because he can handle adversarial media. We've seen him do that in the local Florida level. And it's bad for him. It's one thing to give the middle finger to MSNBC. Right on, Ron. I agree with him and not Vivek on that, right? There's no gettable viewers over there. Right. Though,
you
go ahead, Reef. I got you, babe. I put it down below. I said this is something, guys, I've been experiencing for quite some time out there. Like I said, all the Republicans are Dr. Fauci won't take any tough interviews. He won't go face to face with Dr. McCullough. He wouldn't go face to face with Kerry Mullins when he was around. Dr. West now. Now I know he did an interview with Kim Iverson. I haven't seen the whole interview yet, but it seems like he's kind of coming out of the gate a little soft over here. Some of those questions maybe about COVID, some of those questions about elections, some of those questions about the Second Amendment. You know, he's going to have to do it sooner or later. Your thoughts, Reef?
Well, for one, you know, Megyn Kelly's going to Megyn Kelly, right? You know, her Tara interview is another thing to watch. I'm not happy with her about that one. But I love the establishment media upset that people won't come on their shows now. I'm very happy about that, to say that. You know, they're still mad about Tucker getting how many views on Twitter? They're still upset about that.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, you're seeing legacy media not being gone to by a lot of these if they can avoid it, you know. But none of these people like being asked questions if they're a politician. You know, I think Jose Vega can attest to that. You know, so like unless you get them in a public space, it's hard to pin them down on anything. So, and it's not like they're not getting asked tough questions on Megyn Kelly either. You know, so I don't know why don't they come on our shows? I wonder. You know, so they definitely don't give us any play with that. You know, you have to be in the same room with them, Pasta, to even get a response. So, you know, but I think with COVID stuff, I think, you know, a lot of us on the left, especially coming from where we come from, it was hard to get COVID right. You know, we were propagandized completely on just about every avenue of that. You know, I think, especially with people like JB and myself, who doctors told us to get the jab, especially if we were immunocompromised in some way. You know, I think we regret those decisions, a lot of us, you know, and worried about what that might do to us in the future. But you are seeing people talk about it. You're seeing people like RFK willing to jump on board, you know, and get it right. You're seeing, you know, I've not seen much from Cornell West on it. I think I've seen a few things, and he's generally in the ballpark, I think, from what I've seen, more so than others. He wasn't originally. I don't think a lot of us were. We had to actually see data and see things that were happening, and that was difficult. Thankfully, people like Whitney Webb and those cats are out here getting that information out in a way that we can digest. But, you know, good luck to those guys, you know?
I don't bring it up, Reef and JB, as a gotcha kind of thing to say, see, we were right, you were wrong, because I think the jury's still not out completely, and we're going to see more stuff, and we are some of us who swim in that arena. The thing is that when it came to the COVID-19, the greatest sin, the biggest sin, ladies and gentlemen, was that they censored other people out who didn't have the same opinion from speaking. They demonetized them, they smeared, they took them down, and that's the greatest sin. We can sit here and agree to disagree, but guess what? At least we're provided the opportunity to do so. There were a bunch of doctors who weren't allowed to be doctors, and they were shut out. So, Jose, get the last opinion on this topic, because I got a couple other topics, and I know we're limited on time for some people. But your final thoughts on RFK, Dr. West, the whole 9 yards.
Well, you know, with COVID, I mean, for me, it's not that hard. It's just if you were immunocompromised or if you were elderly, I think the right call was to take it. You know, there was a real risk for people who were immunocompromised or very elderly who could have died from COVID-19. That's not to say it was the lethal thing they were calling it, but in the same way that immunocompromised people can die from the flu, or elderly people can die from the flu, that extra protection, I think I'm okay with, you know, and Jimmy Dore just had on this COVID specialist who said that exact same thing. And even RFK Jr. has said, I'm not anti-vax, I'm just safe vaccines. I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't do that. That's messed up. But he said he's not anti-vax, he's just for informed consent on the vaccines. And I mean, because the question is, what do you do? What precedent has this set that if 10, 20, 30 years from now you do get a disease that has like a 15, 20, 30% lethality rate, can you ever get people to trust a vaccine again after this? No, I don't think so. The real big problem was the censorship around it all. I don't think you would have had this conversation right now if other people were allowed. Like if you had CNN moderating a debate between somebody who was saying, no, I don't think these vaccines should be mandated, and somebody who did. You know why? It's about the transparency. That's what matters more, right? Because we're not all of us are molecular biologists. Not all of us understand the intricacies of the vaccine itself, or even the reasoning behind the mandates. But if there was just a debate where somebody who was like enforcing this and somebody who was on the negative, there would be a lot more trust in the government. I would trust my government more if they said, okay, well, we're going to do a mandate. All right, well, I got to hear the other side. Maybe I don't agree with it, but the fact that they're open and letting people decide. But see, that's the thing, right? They didn't have that. And so I can't trust my government again if they ever want to do the same shit they pulled with COVID. And I can't even trust them again if we actually do ever have like a flesh-eating disease that's going to kill you just by touching you or something. And the vaccine really could protect you. They've already shattered that trust, but overall, the bigger conversation to have around there is that just the public health in general has completely deteriorated. I mean, there's this thing called the Hilberton Standard, where you're supposed to have 4.5 beds for every one American or every 1,000 Americans or so in hospitals. That's just the bare minimum. We don't even have like 1.5 beds for every 1,000 Americans, right?
We don't
now.
even have a half a bed.
It's like our entire health system is not ready for a real crisis. It's just frail. We have what's called the best death system, right? Because they say, well, we spend the most money on healthcare. No, you spend the most money on death care. Preventing you from dying is not the same thing as keeping you healthy. And that's really what I would want to see from Dr. West or RFK Jr. And just to respond to the Megyn Kelly thing, I think one thing I will say about RFK Jr. is that he says I don't know when he doesn't know something, and to me that was very refreshing to hear.
Last question right here, and just a yes or no answer, and we'll get to Jamal Bowman because I know that y'all want to talk about our favorite squad member, Jamal Bowman. Which issue do you think is going to be more important for votes, COVID or Israel? And I'm saying that because we understand where Dr. West stands on that, and that's a red line for some people. But we also understand where RFK stands when it comes to COVID, and that's going to be a one-issue topic for a lot of people to vote. Reef, what one's more important, COVID or Israel?
Hard choice, if I could pick both, I would. But for me, it's got to be, COVID stuff.
Yeah.
So
COVID.
But
Amber, COVID or Israel?
Well, also hard because I see them as inextricably linked into the military surveillance global state and the totalitarian panopticon that they're pushing on all of us. So it's hard to rule them out as individual topics. I think they're inextricably linked. But as far as voting, I don't know. It's going to be hard for me. I'm not going to be able to pick probably COVID, but there's a lot there. They're very linked.
JB, COVID or Israel?
Are you talking about for me in particular or the country in general?
Both. Give us you and then the country.
Faster. Oh boy.
I only know how to ask hard questions. I'm sorry.
I know. That's what you do. I knew what I signed up for. Look, it's hard because I've had 4 family members die from COVID. But it's also tough because I see day in, day out of what is being done against the Palestinians in Gaza. This is tough. I'm going to lean Palestinian, the Palestinian issue.
Yeah.
But that it is very hard for me to say COVID, as second, because that's also a really big thing. Because I'm on kidney dialysis. I'm immunocompromised, so that's also a major thing too. It's just, I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to say the Palestinian issue though.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Jose.
For me, it's Israel. For the nation, it's COVID.
Yeah, I think the same way. I think, well, I don't know. I want to say this much. They're both important to me, like Israel and, what I'm saying? I like Dr. West's position on Israel, and I like, RFK's position on COVID. But I think for the nation, they're going to be more focused on COVID. There's a lot of people who just do not like the way this whole thing was handled, whether they even believe it in or not. Let's not forget the truckers in Canada. When they protest against mandates, a lot of them were vaccinated. It's about choice and the way you can handle it. My body, my choice has to be consistent across the board. All right, let's go to our favorite squad member over here, Jamal Bowman. Now, I'm not just picking on Jamal right now when it comes to the situation, because let's be honest, across the board, our Congress has sucked on this issue. I was talking with my mom, who's over there hanging on out. We were having dinner yesterday, and one of her friends liked Joe Manchin. But I kind of talked about the fact that Joe Manchin went to Ukraine himself. And when Joe Manchin was cornered about the war, he didn't just say he was okay with giving them money. He says he's going to give them more money. So let's play Mr. Jamal Bowman and his opinions about what's going on about Crimea and the Donbass.
What do you want us to discuss?
The Donbass and Crimea.
I don't know if I know much about that. I need to get into the details and learn some more about that. Yeah.
You know what those are?
No. Tell me. Educate me.
Well, let me ask you this. What's your opinion on the war for Ukraine? Do you support U.S. aid to the war in Ukraine?
Yes.
Why do you support that?
Because Putin's a madman, and we got to stop him. But I'm anti-war in general.
Okay.
All
right. But so just so you know, the Donbass and Crimea, those are the central regions in Ukraine, which were in dispute and which started the war over those regions.
Okay.
So.
Okay. To the beach.
Follow up because
no, you don't. Got to follow up. Leave me alone. Talk to somebody else.
I will, but I have to ask you one more question.
You don't got to follow up.
So you didn't know what the Donbass and Crimea were.
Yes.
But you still support aid for Ukraine.
Yes.
It was central to why the war started. So shouldn't you?
Well, that's what you're saying. I got to dig in to see. I'm sure others have another opinion on why that war started as well.
Well,
Putin's a madman.
There are multiple factors. Why do you think the war started?
Come on, man. Why you got just flew in? Hey, y'all. How y'all doing? Good to see y'all. Because our foreign policy is crap, and we solve problems with war. And the military-industrial complex is mad powerful.
Okay.
And they control members of Congress. That's why wars start. You know this.
I agree with that.
You already know I know this.
But you support aid for Ukraine.
Come
what
on,
about a
man.
diplomatic solution?
Am I the one you should be talking to about this? Y'all tripping, man.
I'm asking.
What do you mean? What about a diplomatic? Of course we want a diplomatic solution. I've called for that. Others have. You don't.
All right, there's only so much of the BS. JB, I'm going to let you go first because your eyes are going crazy. But, I mean, this is a common thing. Just say a lot of jibber jabber. Putin's a madman. That makes it okay. You're going to fund billions of dollars to Nazis in the Ukraine and then say you don't know what's up about Crimea and the Donbass. Go ahead, JB.
Hold up. I'm going to stand up for this. Bruh, Jamal, if you don't know what the Donbass and Crimea is, then maybe you shouldn't have voted for that bill in the first place. Like, how are you going to vote on something, right? How are you going to vote on something and then not know about what's going on in region? Bruh, homie, it's been going on since 2014, right? And the fact that the United States led a coup within Ukraine in order to put a more right-wing government in there, and then 14,000 people were basically slaughtered in the Donbass. Like, I don't even know that much about it, and I know more than you. And I would have said no to voting for the war in Ukraine. And then you're like, well, we got to stop these wars. Then why are you funding them?
Yeah, I know, right?
Easy part. It's like, well, we got to fund them because we got to fight against Putin because he's a dictator. And I'm like, and the United States ain't? And the United States ain't.
Yeah.
I'm telling like, and it's like, bro, you are literally in Congress. He's like, what are you talking to me? Because you're in Congress, bruh. It's like, come on. It's like, why are you talking to me? Because you're partially responsible. That's the thing. And the crazy part is, he's like a petulant child. Why are you coming to me? It's like somebody who trips somebody or helps somebody trip and fall and spill some water on the floor, and you're like, why are you coming to me? I'm like, because you contributed to the water being on the floor.
Yeah.
Take some responsibility, bruh. Like, are you not going to accept your responsibility? You're sounding just like every other standard issue Democrat within your party. And you're sounding just like every other standard issue Republican in your party. It's like, yeah, like Megyn Kelly said, grow a pair. Because guess what? You actually have part of it is your fault. And weren't we talking about Neftali Bennett, who was
from
part
Israel.
of the negotiations?
Yeah.
Who were trying to get a peace deal between Zelensky and Putin, but then didn't Boris Johnson intervene and say, no, we're not going to have peace?
Yeah.
They could have had a peace deal already, and it could have been done by now. But instead, the United States and Britain were like, nah, we're not going to have peace. So guess what? As this perpetual war keeps going until we keep this war going until the last Ukrainian, basically saying that they're going to keep fighting until all Ukrainians are dead. That's basically what it is. Do you, Jamal Bowman, actually care about Ukrainian lives? I care about Ukrainian lives because I don't want them to die, and I want this war to be over. So why in the hell would you vote for a war that, or a policy that continues perpetuates this war? It doesn't make any sense.
Putin's a madman.
He is actually
Putin's a madman.
Yep.
Putin's a madman.
Jose, jump right in. Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Because this is like good stuff, JB. Because this is like typical AOC does the same thing, right?
I'm just ripping off of what JB's going off. I mean,
buddy.
Bowman is an actual idiot. You ever heard about weapons of mass? Like, you bring this back to 2004. Imagine if Bowman was a congressman in 2004. Excuse me, Mr. Bowman, did you hear about these weapons of mass destruction? I'm not educated on that issue, but Saddam Hussein and Osama.
He did it on Julian Assange too. He did it on Assange too.
Yeah, and I yelled at Bowman back in September for funding the Ukrainian neo-Nazis. I mean, look, what he said about, well, it's American foreign policy that's terrible. It's like, yes. Why did you vote to fund them then? Why did you vote to perpetuate the military-industrial complex? And he says later in that video, it was one vote, man. It was one vote. You're going to get at me for one vote? Yeah, we'll get you. Like, yes, it is not just one vote. It's you being come on. Where is your vocal opposition to the military-industrial complex? We've seen Bowman before say on Israel, I'm playing the long game. Because he voted for Iron Dome funding. And then when the Green people confronted him here in the Bronx on that issue, he said, no, I'm with you. I'm just playing the long game. Don't worry. We'll make sure Palestinians get their rights eventually. Right now, Israel's got to get everything they need first.
I don't know where that came from. Yeah, he was screaming from the background. Hey, and Jamal Bowman he's played this game all the time. But, AOC's done this too. Guys, where she just says, oh, that's right, we just got to be about it. It's like they can say these things, but then their funding doesn't mean anything. Their votes don't mean anything. It's pretty bad. Reef, jump on in. Give us your opinions about the whole situation, and then we'll finish up with Amber.
Yes, sir. Dude, Jamal Bowman, man, what are you doing? Like, first of all, here, let me bring to everyone's attention, because Jose Vega is not the only one that asked this guy questions. INN definitely has some stuff to do with that. You have me big, right? Yeah, cool. So here's Bowman, right? Let's see what he says about that other madman that we have in office.
Really grateful and appreciative to them and all of us and all of you But I'm also like, damn, yo, like we got to take over this whole shit. Like, and I mean right now, like 2024 is a wrap. It's not just taking back the House. We got to grow seats in the Senate. We've got to drag this 80-year-old man across the finish line of the win.
Why?
I'm sorry, man, but I'm upset, yo. Because here's the other thing, right? It's like,
Why Biden?
I know, right?
So what? Why Biden? Why? Right? You don't know anything about the Donbass in Ukraine. You say Putin's a madman. You don't got nothing to back it up. And you're going to talk about we got to get our good friend Joe, this idiot old man, across the finish line. You called him an idiot old man. So what does that say about you? You're talking about madmen over here. You're talking about idiot old men over here. How you playing this, dog? What's going on?
The hypocrisy is strong with that one.
Very much so.
Yeah.
You know, like we talked about, what does he also think the dam was blown up by Russians? Is he not paying attention there either? Does he not know about the gray zone had to like, what's going on? Who does he think blew up the Nord Stream pipeline?
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't know about the Donbass and Crimea. He has no idea what started the war. Does he know about NATO? What doesn't he know? Right?
Hey, do you know
I'm
about NATO,
betting.
Jamal? That's great.
I'm betting that this guy, like, it's not naivety. He knows. He has to know.
Yeah.
This guy's a smart cookie, graduated from an Ivy League school. Like, he doesn't know. He can't Google.
Yeah.
He got Google on his phone.
Well,
like,
that's a good thing, Reef. I think we should ask Amber. This is a perfect place for her. A lot of people say AOCIA. Are these guys controlled opposition, or are they just that much of an idiot, in your personal opinion?
I think they are controlled opposition, and I think they're on heavy pharmaceuticals the minute they get into office. They don't do shit. They don't read their emails. They put on expensive suits and walk into places not knowing what the hell they're doing. The votes are already cast for them by their aides. Those are all put into place by whoever funded their campaign. Like, you guys have all worked in politics. You know how this shit works. This is not rocket science. But it's astonishing to me. My 12-year-old knows what the fucking Donbass is. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, I mean, and now we've got, Fetterman, a junior, freshman congressman, is in charge of the farm bill. Like, in what reality is this ever happened? Like, you had to be in the Senate, for decades to get a position like that. I mean, this game they're playing is just insulting and despicable. And it's so fake. I'm so sick of it. Nobody trusts any of these people to do anything. I don't think they can tie their own shoelaces.
I think that's on purpose, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the thing. They want those young. I mean, it's a do what you're told to do and say yes at the right time. And so then the aides come in, fresh out of college, or, maybe it's an internship or whatever. They're told exactly how to vote, how to respond to things. I'm here in Seattle, one of the most progressive areas of the country, including my legislative district. And we're, when I sit here, and I went to Pramila Jayapal's town hall, and it was like listening to a DNC talking point script. I was so disappointed. It was, I don't even know how I made it through the end of the damn thing. It was disgusting. I was pissed. Like, and I wasn't the only one. It was the most heat she'd ever seen. Like, all of these people are just talking trash about nothing. They know nothing. It's maddening to think that they're spending billions and billions and billions of our dollars while shitting on the people here at home, destroying our healthcare, destroying education, destroying our economy, and all by design. And they just like, okay, yeah, whatever the Mick talking points are, sure, Putin bad. It's
yeah. Just scream
There's an
Putin bad
interesting
and everything's okay. Then you get away with it. Jose's having a little problems with his electricity. Let's hope he gets him back. But I do want to put this up right here. This is from our Rockfin over there, our Super Ray contributions from Gregory Walker, our good friends. Roar Media left a good one, says, great panel. We'll love everybody there. Thank you so much from your friends in Roar Media. This is from Gregory Walker, says, the gates of hell say abandon all hope beyond this point. With that being said, let's just vote in Marianne Williamson to get our free spirit meth crystals and spiritually level up in the metaverse. What do you say? That's Marianne Williamson over there. This is also something interesting to talk about, too, as well. This is from OTR Trucker. OTR Trucker says, and thank you for the Super Ray contribution, OTR Trucker. The 2016 DNC lawsuit, fraud lawsuit, resulted in a decision that political parties, being private corporations, can lie, steal, and cheat in their primaries. Anybody who stands up in the primary knows he has been selected by their relative treatment in the media and is therefore either normalizing the fraud or is saying things that need to be said. Well, let me tell you this much, OTR Trucker. I think you should go back and watch my video that I did with Don DeBar, because there is a little bit more to it than that. Things to point out, and I'm not downplaying the case. I've talked about it a lot of times. This particular case is what radicalized me when it came to elections. When Bruce Spiva, who was the DNC lawyer, said, hey, listen, guys, if we wanted to, technically, we can go into the back room full with cigar smoke and pick whoever we want. We don't have to go by the results of the people, even though we say that in our charter. We're allowed to do that because we're a corporation, and technically, there's no such thing as a Democrat. Well, that case was still kind of pending until Bernie Sanders, when he went to Philadelphia, he said, we're going to suspend the rules and not go by the delegations, put them on record, but by acclamation, I handed to Hillary Clinton. That's what made the case moot, and people aren't talking about that. So it's different if RFK jumps on the case, which, by the way, just like all of Trump's cases, just like Carrie Lake's case now, it's going to be knocked down. It's going to be knocked down to notwithstanding, because the judges don't want to take these cases, because guess why? They won their seats on that bench by the same system. So if they degrade the same system that put them there, how does that make them look? They never take on these cases, and there's a reason, because they benefited from the same system themselves. So I don't hold it against RFK for running. That doesn't mean I say go and donate money to him. I even said this, guys. I appreciate RFK's campaign only because the political discussions we're going to have. And that's the great thing about Dr. West coming in here. He's called my mom before Sister Joan. So hopefully we'll have him on the show. But I can't wait for what he brings to the table, because Dr. West will get in there and usually have hard conversations. So there's more to come. Before y'all get out of here, I want to do this one last thing right here. It is RFK at the border, because he went down there. Let's talk a little bit about the border. Let's talk about this. And I want to get you guys' opinion, because this is something I think that the populist right is missing in this country. I had an event this weekend. I talked to a lot of Trump people, and I talked about the fact is our migration problem at the border stems a lot. I'm not saying all of it. It stems a lot from our foreign policy, being that we have all these bases. You've seen the map, guys. 1,000 bases in the world. There's 82 down there. And the only country in Central America where a lot of people aren't coming from is, guess where? Costa Rica. Guess what is the only country the CIA hasn't messed with their government or removed them from power or supported the opposition? Costa Rica. The country we've removed people from, Manuel Zelaya in Honduras. Back in the 50s, I believe it was the Arbenez, Banana Republic in Guatemala. Those two countries are where most of the migrants are coming from. So we have to say that it factors into play. But let's listen to RFK at the border. JB, I'm going to let you go first when we come out of this, and your thoughts about the border and how we handle it. Because, you know, it is true that when they do come to the border, they do get some help. But for how long do they get that help for? I think that's exaggerated. Let's take a listen.
Hey, everybody, I'm at the border wall around Yuma, Arizona. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. We've watched about 150 people come across. You can see the end of the wall down there. And we've watched about 150 people come across in the last hour. The first group were about 50 or 60 people from Africa, from West Africa. This group that is filing behind me right now, we interviewed many of them. They're from Peru, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, India, China, Tibet, Nepal, and all together, people have come across right here from 117 nations in the last couple of years. In 3 years, in total, 7 million people have come across the border illegally into our country. And from here, they're put on these buses and they're brought to the Border Patrol station where they're processed. After 4 or 5 days, they're released on their own reconnaissance into our country, and most of them are never seen or heard from again. And the stories that we heard from these people are absolutely heartbreaking. This is a humanitarian crisis because of the understanding across the globe that we now have an open border here. There are people being drawn here. They're being abused. There's all kinds of just horrific, terrible, terrible stories. And this is not a good thing for our country. It's not a good thing for these people. And it is unsustainable.
Okay, JB, I'm going to give it a first crack at it because I know as a leftist, some of us got mad too as well. But I think it's kind of a valid point when he says they're let go and they're never heard from again. And he's kind of implying that, you know what I'm saying, it's an open border. They get to come here and they go, and we don't get to, we won't be able to track them. So therefore, it's a form of illegal immigration is what he's kind of implying because he used the term illegal immigration. But I don't see it as that bad because here's the thing. This is a situation in which the left and the right are just screaming at each other. And they don't understand each person's point of view. I can tell you this is the best analogy I can give. Because when I've heard a lot of conservatives talk about this, say like, no, you guys on the left say that because we're against illegal immigration, that we lack compassion, that we don't care. It's not that. It's that we have a limited amount of resources and we have people sleeping on the streets and our veterans are sleeping on the streets. And shouldn't we take care of our own first? Now, I'm not going to say that's right or wrong, but I know this much. If there was a village of people and people are starving and mother found some food, she's going to probably take care of her own children first before she gives the rest of the village food. No? So I want to hear your thoughts on this, JB. Not so much on the way he handled it. You can please make a comment about that, but about how we handle this issue altogether, as well as recognizing the causality of our foreign policy, which I'm sorry, the party of individual responsibility on the right is not being responsible for our foreign policy. Go ahead, buddy.
So about saying that we only have so much, there's a myth of scarcity in this country. 50% of what we eat gets thrown away or tossed out because of the companies wanting to keep prices a certain way.
Great point.
There's over 16 million vacant houses, and we have over 500,000 who are houseless in this country.
Great point.
The scarcity myth does not exist. It's a myth. And so to say that, people coming in, we don't have enough to take care of them, that's by design by the corporate dictators because
let me jump in real quick. What about jobs, though? What about jobs? There's a limit of jobs in this country, and that's the main thing a lot of conservative people will point to. Please continue.
Oh, the jobs? I mean, if you want to talk about jobs, let's talk about NAFTA, about how they actually shipped our jobs overseas, and that was by design as well. Like they want people to fight over the jobs so that they can pay you as little as possible, so that when you finally get the job, then you're just grateful to be paid pennies. And so look at what's going on in our state of Florida, right? DeSantis signed a bill into law that puts people who are undocumented, they can be arrested and have a felony on them for working at a job. And so they stopped, right? But a lot of construction stopped here. A lot of a lot of people working, in the produce industry, the agriculture industry have, slowed down dramatically. And the thing is that they're working for wages that are penance. It's minute, right? And so because, they're willing to be exploited, then that's why they're willing to allow them to come in. But at the same time, a lot of these people also are refugees. And a lot of times people are like, they're coming in illegally. I'm like, well, the refugee status means that they can come in, and then depending on their situation, then they can be taken in as refugees. So my problem is that people do not leave their countries if they already have it good. They may come, they may visit, they may even move. But if you have it good, you're not really going to run, away from where you're already at, because that's your home. That's where your family is. The problem is the United States foreign policy has made it so that their countries are really unbearable. So they have to come. To be honest with you, people come in here as undocumented people. It's just chickens coming home to roost, because this country has made their country so unlivable that they have to come to a country where they're still vilified day in, day out by half the country. And so because of that, guess what? They're coming in here, and then on top of it, a lot of times they're not living that great. And then on top of that, they're still paying taxes in this country, even though they're not given a lot of benefits. Some, yes, depending on where you're coming from. I mean, I know there's some people who come from Cuba that have certain, policies for them, but everybody else, not. And so when it comes to people who are coming from across the border, I think that if we change our policy when it comes to foreign policy, it will slow the amount of undocumented immigrants coming across.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, if we were to, change the system, because the system depends on people being desperate, and part of that desperation means having a scarcity of resources, when in fact we really don't. Because if you really want to talk about, let's talk about scarcity. Let's talk about how, you have, a Dunkin' Donuts that will throw away all their donuts at the end of the night instead of giving it to people who are homeless. You know what I mean? You have these grocery stores that will throw away perfectly good food, and they'll say, oh, well, it's just because we don't want people to get sick. And it's like, that's bullshit.
It's against the law. It's against the law, because you have all these health departments. Like, once that food's unbearable, it's got to go in the trash. They won't even let it go away. It's like, that's also a law in some places. Please continue.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the scarcity mindset, that's what they make people look at it that, well, we can't because there's not enough for everybody. I mean, have you seen the Midwest? Have you seen places, that are the mountainous with the Midwest, Montana, Idaho, all these different states that we have a lot of room. The problem is that they just want to make it seem like there's not enough, so that you'll fight against your next fellow man or woman in order to have something better. And it's really just a demonization, because, if it's not going to be black people, then it's going to be immigrants. If it's not immigrants, then it's going to be people who are Muslim. If it's not Muslim, it's going to be trans people. It's going to be somebody that's going to be vilified in order for people to go against their fellow man, just so that they keep us divided. And that's all what it is. It's a division tactic.
Yeah. Keep the people divided, and they run off with all the resources. Jose, you're from the North Triangle, where your family is, right? From Central America, I believe.
El Salvador.
And we know what happened over there, the civil wars that were propagated over there for many years. In fact, a lot of people from the MS-13 members, right? They were from the United States. They got deported back to El Salvador. They were actually from the United States. It was during the Clinton administrations. They're like, hey, you can go back to El Salvador. You can spend 8 years in American prison. And they were like, well, I'm not from El Salvador. My parents are. He goes, let me say this again. You can go back to El Salvador or spend 8 years in an American prison. So a guy who's the son of a person from El Salvador gets sent back there. And now Nayib Bukele, who is the president of El Salvador, the only way he saw he can handle this problem, because it was overloaded. It was these max prisons and stuff. But your thoughts on what's going on in the border and actually our foreign policy as a causality of migration to the southern border?
Well, I mean, yes, the reason why there's a lot of immigration is because of our foreign policy. I mean, we've couped damn near every country in South and Central America, and we put the CIA in there one way or another. And I think even RFK Jr. said the only place we haven't is Costa Rica. Right? We don't see a lot of people coming in from Costa Rica, although I know Costa Rica is where a lot of the politicians meet with actual drug lords and stuff. So maybe that's why they've kind of like kept that a neutral place. It's a very, it's a place where a lot of things are. It's like Switzerland for the drug lords. You know, that's where all the congressmen go and meet with the drug lords and hug and high five and have all these orgies and stuff. But you know, JB's right. It is a scarcity. It's a manufactured scarcity in terms of jobs and food and stuff. I mean, with foods, we've interviewed farmers who say they could feed the world 4 times over, the entire world, 4 times over. Okay, if you just got rid of corporate farming and if you actually brought back parity pricing, and if you actually helped the farmers, and they were just, these were just American farmers, mind you. They said American farmers alone can feed the entire world. In terms of jobs, look at your roads, look at your infrastructure, look at the fact that Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. Why can't you invest in people coming into the country, training them how to actually fix and maintain these things?
But Putin, Putin.
Yeah,
sorry,
right.
I had to.
No, but it's a good question, right? Like, why not treat these people with dignity, actually build our infrastructure, improve our infrastructure, make advances. That way they have productive employment. They're fixing the country and they actually work with people who are here. And then, you know, everybody, you know, it's like a rising tide, right? So your infrastructure is getting better. People's living standards get better, right? Have them build the hospitals, have them build schools, have them build roads. And you know, but the thing is, like, the intention of the government in the United States right now is not to do that. I hate to say this, but the only reason why New York City didn't collapse in the 80s was because of the influx of immigration. The immigrants that actually came in and kept New York City up. Okay. And Ron DeSantis now has just outlawed illegal immigration in Florida. Illegal immigrants from getting employment in Florida. And now I believe they have a shortage of labor workers, right? So this myth that like American workers want the jobs that immigrants are taking is, well, you know, it's not true. We're seeing that nobody actually wants to do the stuff that the immigrants are happily doing. And I'm not even saying it's a dignified position. I'm just simply saying, right, that Americans are just, you know, lazy, and then they're saying that the immigrants are stealing their jobs when they're not. So, yeah.
Amber, why don't you jump in over here? I don't know about you. I know a few people who want to go pick some fruit. What about you?
Well, I've actually picked fruit in the fields and worked in a lot of, I would say, factory jobs with a lot of immigrants and a lot of elderly, a lot of felons, especially in my teen years. And 100%, the only thing we have a lack of here is democracy. We have a lack of democracy and a lack of affordable housing. And the military industrial complex wants the middle class of the United States to completely implode. And if they don't get the middle class of the US and Europe completely dependent upon some kind of UBI or CBDCs, then they can't go forward with the 2030 agenda. And that's the end goal. And we can't lose sight of that. We've had tons of solutions, tons of ability to fix these problems, feed people, heal people. But in the meantime, we've made everybody deadly sick in this country for the past 40 years with a toxic food supply. And people, if they're able to, most of them are unable to actually work labor jobs. And, you know, like remember when we left Afghanistan, we took a whole plane load of people and dropped them off at a chicken processing plant in like freaking Alabama or something because they had no workers. So the administration is doing this to fill the need, that pipeline of cheap labor. And we can't get the truth out there, and people don't want these conversations happening on mainstream media. They don't want actual, you know, the nightly news to reflect this stuff. It's aliens, you know, or it's some other distraction bullshit that they're trying to constantly shove down our throat instead of knowing that we've had these solutions the entire time. And, you know, when you talk about things like You know, and the shitty, I guess the shittiest part is we've done this in other countries too. So you cross that border, you're given a cell phone, you're given all of the childhood vaccine schedule, plus all at once into your body. And then you're told to go off, here's some food stamps, here's a card, and good luck. You know, and
Yeah.
I nobody can find housing anywhere in this country right now. It's so ridiculous. And, you know, I see a whole other version of that too in the tech industry right now in the Pacific Northwest, especially in the West Coast, is we're taking very qualified, very skilled, high-tech laborers that are coming in from India and China and all over places where they've been given free master's degrees and free PhDs. And they come into a $200,000 a year job and they don't have, you know, a lifetime of a bad credit score. And they don't, so they can go out and buy brand new houses and invest that money. And so that's kind of this shift that's happening. But I also see once they're here in the US for a couple of years, they get so physically sick that they leave and they have to sell everything out. Or, you know, Face Meta or whatever decides to fire everybody and send everybody back. And they have, you know, 6 months to find a job or go. And most people know it takes much longer than that to find a decent job. So it's coming in at kind of both angles. You know, you've got the really low wage agriculture workers, restaurant workers, construction workers, and then you've got the really high wage tech workers doing the same thing. And it's going to crash. And the rest of us who've been born here and, you know, kind of put in these, you know, kind of debt slavery situations with student loans, with, you know, just increased inflation to the point of not being able to function, then that collides with all of that. And it's just a recipe for destruction. But they're just trying to fill the gaps right now so they can get ultimate control and then they can implode it. And that's how I see it. I don't know a better way to handle it. And I also think you've got this whole thing with the white extremist, you know, propaganda piece as well, where most of that is federal agents and paid for by federal government, you know. So it's just this huge propaganda machine at work the whole time on all, you know, all five of us could go onto our social media or go onto the same website. If we all typed in CNN.com, we would all have a completely different experience. And we don't ever talk about how that's being controlled and manipulated in our society.
That's the key right there. It's an attack on all sides, meant to keep us divided and fighting each other while they run off with all the resources. Reef, I called you Reed. My friend Reed Coverdale is probably watching. Reef, you're in Florida. You want a job picking some fruit now that DeSantis has signed his bill, man? I can hook you up. What do you think, buddy?
He's gonna have trouble finding that labor when no one wants to work for those wages, ain't he?
Nobody's gonna want to do that job. You've seen those videos with that. I mean, that
absolutely been there.
Yeah.
But child labor.
I mean, right? Yes. You mean like what they're doing in other states. But yeah, I think everyone kind of hit on this, that this is kind of culture war stuff that gets prodded out every election cycle that we all know the solutions to. We've known them for the last couple of decades now. It's a symptom of the issues, not the issue. But you know, here in Florida, we all see those buses that get taken to Walmart full of Jose's. No offense, Jose. You know, that like it's similar to the way capitalists used mine workers and, you know, kept mining towns. It's all the same capitalistic, only for profit problem that we've had for a while. You know, I think the hypocrisy here again, you know, who remembers, raise their hand if you remember AOC crying at the border not that long ago, when those kids in cages are still here, you know. So who was the deporter in chief? Everyone remember that too? Oh, that was Obama. Got it. He deported more people. What do you think Biden's changed those policies? No. Do you think he's made it?
Obama deported more people than Donald Trump in his first 4 years. But people don't even talk about that.
No. Right now, Biden has made, I think, 2 actions to make immigration harder to do. So, and more injustice in that particular boot wears. But I mean, you probably remember, or your mom probably remembers when Reagan was having barrels pointed at people on that long ass island out of the Keys. Long ass bridge. So, my mother remembers that when she was working there, that they were literally, National Guard was out there checking for Cubans in your car. God forbid. But we all know why. JB hit on it. NAFTA, other business practices, sending our jobs overseas, among other terrible regulations that have been put in regards to, money, people making more money and taking away from the people at the bottom. So I always think this is class stuff, right? We're along with those immigrants. They're doing the same thing we are. They're all trying to live, and the boots are on their neck just like it's on ours. So until we deal with that boot, I think it's a moot point.
Don DeBar is in the chat. He was mentioning to me, he goes, I don't understand why people get all mad when immigrants come looking for their stuff. I mean, all the majority of the resources down there are owned by Western corporations.
Right, we've taken them.
Guatemala, right? The banana. It was the UFC, the United Fruit Company, actually, along with Arthur Dulles, who was the CIA chief, who, by the way, lost his job under Kennedy. Kennedy got assassinated. They rehired him back. He was invested in the UFC, the United Fruit Company. They went into Guatemala, removed the president because he had nationalized the fruit. He had nationalized the banana, and they were using that resource to pay for roads, schools, hospitals. It was being used for the people, but instead we said, nope. And we removed him from office, and now we have a bunch of Guatemalan people coming to our border, and they're still the West. They are messing with that country. There's, I don't have the receipts, and we're looking more into it, but for some reason, they left the indigenous candidates off the ballot for their next election. And they want that Western-friendly government to stay there in Guatemala so they can control all those resources. We're going to wrap it up now. We don't have time to get to the last part of the day, but let's say goodbye to Hollywood and everybody out there, starting with Reef. Reef, let everybody know where they can find you, what you got going on, and anything else you want to mention really briefly.
INN News with me and Colin Wednesday night, Sunday night. How do we miss that? With me and Indy. We're doing a ton of shows over at INN. If you want to find us, you can find us on @GetIndyNews on Twitter. I'm at Reef Breland on Twitter, easy to find, but you can go to indynews.network to get all the links. Super easy. You can go there. Everything's there. All the members, there's too many to mention. But
gotcha. Mom's clapping in the background over there. JaybeFaunt, what's going on, big dog?
All right, so you guys can find me at JaybeFaunt on Twitter as well as on Instagram. You can also find me at JaybeFaunt on YouTube as well. I have my own channel as well if you guys want to find me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so if you guys would like to, you guys can go on YouTube, Rumble, and Rockfin. You guys can find Revolutionary Blackout Network on there, as well as you can find Revolutionary Blackout on Twitter at Rev Black Network on Twitter. So, and you can go to Revolutionary Blackout Network, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. So if you guys would like to get some of the more of the links there as well. And thank you so much as well to Pasta for having me on. It was a privilege. If you guys make sure to also give a like, as well as you guys haven't subscribed to Convo Couch, make sure to do that as well.
Thank you so much. And Sabby Sabs interviewing Dr. Cornell West tonight. Don't forget to see that. Jose. Let him know.
No, that's funny. Is that original? You just come up with that? Or? Never heard that before.
Make fun of me in front of my moms, in front of my friends, in front of my moms.
I'm sorry,
I gotta
Mama
put me on blast in front of my friends, man. Come on.
I'm sorry, Mama Pasta. I'm sorry.
All right.
People can find me at Declaring Independence on YouTube or on Twitter. Hoseby Trigger. That's JOSBTRIGGA. Hose B, because Hose A was taken. So, yeah. That's it.
Is that original, Hose B?
Yeah, it is actually.
Is that original? Amber,
yes.
You look great with those glasses on. You look really wicked smart. Let everybody know where they can find you.
For sure. You can find me on Brave New Future, on Roar Media. And I had one quick thing I wanted to bring up real fast because it tied into the last topic. I've been working on a project with my daughter for her report, and it is about the failed drug war. And so we went through, did a little research together. I gave her all, wonderful Corbett report about Whitney or about Gary Webb and his reporting. So she went to school to go write a report. Every single link, every single YouTube video was blocked by her school computer. Until we have free speech, until we're able to get the truth out past this bullshit, people aren't gonna know what's happening, and we can't do that. So anyway, free speech, free press. I'm so proud of all of you guys for everything that you're doing. I see you all everywhere. And my show is Brave New Future. It's every other Friday night mostly on Rockfin, but you can find us on Roar Media. You can find me at AK Amber on Twitter. I'm in a whole bunch of different groups as well. And I'm going to be starting a new special interview series just with James Rubakowski on the panopticon that's happening, focusing on the UN, SDGs, WHO, kind of this global system, because that's really what's at stake. So I'm excited to do that. We're also launching a Roar Media cookbook, so stay tuned. I'll expect recipes from all of you and good stories.
I made sauce, she made pasta. We had a good ass meal. TD tipped over on their super raise. Thank you for standing up for the things you know right. Thank you to all my guests on the panel today. You all were beautiful. I can't say enough about you. I follow all these people. You guys should go follow them too. These are no more than just my coworkers and my colleagues. These are my friends. And we'll see you soon. That's it for today, everybody. Combo out. We'll catch you soon.
Labels are bad. Good night, fam.
Bye, guys. Good night, fam.